This video will describe how to schedule exams with the Office of Accessibility. Please note that only in-person timed and proctored exams should be scheduled with the Office of Accessibility. Before your exams. When you complete a release of examination form, whether it is at our web-based or paper form, it is you scheduling your exam in Office N360. Before completing a release of examination form, you should have submitted a professor notification form, so your professor is aware that you are registered with the Office of Accessibility. You should also complete a testing agreement form, which is located on the Office of Accessibility website under Important Forms. This form only needs to be completed once. Testing Accommodations Agreement, google.com. Scheduling your exams. We have two different forms to schedule your exams. The first is a paper form. Part 1 should be completed by you, the student. You should indicate your name, telephone number, CUNY First ID and classroom where the class is taking place. Please read the statement on the form which states, please note, as mentioned on the form, it is the student's responsibility to submit a completed release of examination to OA 1 week, 7 days, prior to the scheduled examination date. Accommodations cannot be guaranteed otherwise. I agree to uphold the integrity of the examination and follow the procedures for testing accommodations as outlined in the Office of Accessibility Testing Accommodations Agreement. You must then sign the form. On the bottom of the form, your professor must indicate the exam date, time the exam is being given, and the length of time provided to the class. They must also indicate if you are allowed anything for the exam, how we will receive it, and how we should return it to them. This form should be returned to the Office of Accessibility, either in person in Office N360 in the main building, or by email no later than 3 to 5 business days before the scheduled exam. If a form is not submitted in advance, there is no guarantee the Office of Accessibility will be able to proctor the exam. Web form process. You also have the option to use the web form to schedule your exam. It is titled Accommodated Testing Form. The first page of the form will ask for your email, if you have documentation on file with the office of your exam. It is titled Accessibility and whether you completed an accommodation letter request form to notify your professors. The second page will ask you for your contact information. CUNY First ID, legal first name, preferred first name if different than your legal one, last name, BMCC email address, preferred email address, and your phone number. The third page will ask you information about the class semester, course name, subject, number, section, type, day and time, and course location. Next, it will ask you if this is an in-person of exam, and if it is being administered online, what method is being used. Additionally, if you selected other, it asks for you to specify what is being used. Lastly, it asks you to mention any software which may be being used. It will then ask you for your instructor's information. Your instructor's first name, last name, email, and phone number. Lastly, it asks if you have conflicts with the initial testing time, one of which being another class, or if it takes places outside our operating hours. You should indicate if that is the case in the other box or comment box and when you would be able to take the exam. You should list the exam date and start time on the form and any additional comments in regard to the exam scheduling. Make sure to hit submit when the form is completed. The Office of Accessibility will use your form submission to contact your faculty for any additional information we may need to proctor your exam. As a student, it is good practice to follow up to make sure the form was received. Please email accessibility@bmcc.cuny.edu to make sure your form submission went through. Frequently asked questions. What if my exam is being proctored on Blackboard, Brightspace, or another platform, or I do not need to take it on campus? For example, untimed exam, take-home exam, etc. If your exam is online and timed but it is not needed to be taken in the Office of Accessibility, you, the student, should email the professor a few days before the scheduled exam to remind them to change the parameters for your extended time. It is the student's responsibility to remind the professor of their extended time, so make sure to do so. If your exam is untimed, you do not get extended time. For example, if you have 2 weeks to complete it, you do not receive more weeks to complete it. What if my exam takes place outside of the Office of Accessibility operating hours? If your exam takes places in the late evening or on weekends and is an in-person, proctored exams, you can still schedule it with the Office of Accessibility. We will communicate with you and the professor to arrange an alternative time for you to complete the exam. Make sure your accommodation letter request form and testing agreement form is completed prior to scheduling an exam. You have 2 options for scheduling exams with us. For the paper form, student completes the top of the form, and the professor completes the bottom. Then the student returns form to office. For the web form, student completes form, and Office of Accessibility contacts professor. If you have any questions or concerns in regards to scheduling your exams, please contact our main email accessibility@bmcc.cuny.edu.